Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dungeons and Drams. I see that there's quite an audience tonight, which is awesome. Nice to see everybody here. So I want to just kind of jump right into this and talk about, I'm sure you probably noticed the title says finale. So just so you understand. So the campaign that we were playing is actually going to end tonight, and I figure I owe you guys all an explanation as to why that is. So long story short, I couldn't keep up with the demand that it is to plan a campaign for every single week. As you all probably know, I run 2 YouTube channels at this point. Everybody here, we all kind of do a ton of work, and doing everything week to week was like, I didn't sleep very much, as you could kind of imagine. And it was starting to be, it's just too much. So, and that's fair. Doing the AI videos and stuff, that's something that doesn't have a definitive time frame, and I can kind of take however much time I need. But doing the campaign every week and planning out things, making maps, doing whatever, it's just a ton of work. So I hope you guys understand. So what I thought we could do for tonight to make things a little fun, other than we'll kind of go around, we'll talk about what we're all drinking, of course. But what I wanted to do is talk about the campaign up until now, some of the major events that could have gone completely differently, because as you would imagine with any given D&D campaign, the hierarchy of different events is fairly wide. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about that, as well as where the campaign could have gone, like the pieces that I have planned out. And then also how our characters, after the final battle, as one would, what would have happened afterwards. So I think let's start off. We'll kind of go around, and we'll start with Clifton. What are you drinking tonight?
So, actually, I wanted to get something, normally I kind of start off light and then go up higher proof. But tonight, this is a special occasion. I grabbed a couple different single barrel electric egg barrel proofs. So I got a 9-year here and then a 10-year. So I'll be doing a little side-by-siding while we're talking. But yeah, one of my favorite bourbons. So I figured what a good send-off for this channel. Let's drink one of my favorites. So
nice.
And we're talking our characters too.
Yeah, you know what? We may as well talk about who you played. Yeah.
Okay. I played Knobolas, the half elf warlock. A little bit sensual, but a little bit sensual, but also has another side to him people don't see often. So,
it's funny that you say that. I was on a walk with the dog just a couple of days ago, which is usually where I think about this campaign quite a bit. And I was remembering, I was like, he totally boned both a man and a woman at that brothel.
Oh, yeah.
Because why wouldn't, why not both?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So, Adriana, are you drinking Knob Creek tonight?
I mean, I like to really shock and awe people. So I'm having some Knob Creek 12. But I also grabbed Elijah Craig, the A124.
Nice.
Mainly, I haven't paid much attention to it, so I'm like, I should try.
Nice.
That as my send-off whiskeys for now, at least. And I played TaLin Creek, a little halfling ranger with a dog.
With a dog named Booker. Yeah.
Yeah, you never got to kill Booker. Yeah.
I know. Despite all my best attempts, I finally gave you a cool magic item, and
Yeah, and I never really had to yell cauliflower and use it, so that worked out.
Was that going to be the word that you
was
picked?
going to be the word, because there's no good reason to use the word cauliflower.
I like it.
So
I like that you thought about that. That's great.
Yeah.
Jason, what are you drinking tonight?
I'm not drinking anything. I'm at my girlfriend Kim's house.
Oh, okay.
There's no whiskey here. So.
I figured at this point, should you just cut yourself and just kind of sip, like you're
give it a little sip. So yeah. Oh, actually, you know what? I think I did leave a bottle of Rare Breed in here, but
it's in the back of the toilet.
Don't know where she put it. Yeah, it could be in the back. It could be like in the bathroom cabinet somewhere. I don't know where it is. But
it's like The Godfather. It's like taped to the bottom of the toilet.
Yeah. She probably hides it under my pillow at night. I don't even know where it's there. So I played Alessio, the arcane trickster / rogue, and it was a lot of fun to get to learn how to utilize him along the way. I think that was kind of one of my favorite parts of each and every week, is learning his unique abilities and, of course, dodging snakes most of the time. But he liked it dark. He liked it, he liked to try to be a little bit sneaky, and I had fun playing that character. It was I'll miss Alessio.
I would have to go back and double check, but I think you and Agnomeio are probably pretty close, but you might have edged him out on like final kills. I feel like there was a lot of flourish between the two of you guys, and I'm trying to think of who had more. But the one that really sticks out to me was when you killed the Umber Hulk, and you shoved the rapier right up his butt. Yeah,
right up his right in the couscous.
So speaking of Agnomeio, what are you drinking tonight? Yeah.
Well, I figured in honor of Booker, I'm doing a little book.
Oh, look.
Yeah, so this is chapter 4, the brown rice bourbon mixed with the bourbon and the rye. It smells like a bourbon, drinks more like a rye, so I dig it.
Nice.
But yeah, and I played Agnomeio, aka Noro, aka Agnomeio. The secret identity never really worked. It was very, very clearly him.
Well, I mean, you did get recognized though as a celebrity.
Yes,
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
He was just a little. He's a little crazy bastard.
He was.
That's basically what Agnomeio was. Just always getting into trouble.
He was. That was some of my favorite was trying to not only plan combats where you could be crazy, but not where your insanity could potentially be like a huge amount of work extra for me. Like putting you on a skyship was already dangerous. but
yeah, I'm surprised I didn't fall off at some point. I thought that was going to happen.
Well, you had some balls strapped to your chest, so I mean
that's true.
So I'm starting off with a beer tonight. So I'm Bill, the DM. So this is from Saco River, which is up in New Hampshire. It's called Murder Hornet's Nest. And then I was gonna hop. I think it's like just a probably New England IPA. It's 9% though. And this is coming off of, we just went out to dinner and I think I had an 11.8% beer and then like an 8% as well. And then I'm going to bust open some McConnell's. So it's technically open. I've had like 1 or 2 sips of it. I'm actually a huge fan of this whiskey. I was recommended this by a random person who worked at a store. And I was like, what are people buying now? And she said that. So I was surprised. But yeah, pretty good Irish whiskey for Irish Whiskey Month. Mm-hmm. So, okay. So typically at this point, we'd kind of go into the recap. But what I'd like to do is talk about a couple of things. All of you had come up with a backstory of some sort. TaLin, you and I, we kind of figured yours out as we went along because obviously you joined the campaign a little later. And one of the great stressors, let me pause for a sec. Tony, thank you very much for the super chat. Appreciate it. Yeah, sure. Bill attacked me personally on Cliffy's live stream, and I want some revenge. Well, yeah. I love your live streams, Clifton. I think you have such a cool community. Actually, it's like a bunch of really close knit people. So one thing that I had, you guys all came up with these backstories, and one of the great stressors in this entire thing was attempting to try to make your backstories matter. So one thing that has been on my mind for absolutely ever is Catherine Zeta gnomes.
Yeah.
So let me kind of talk about this a little bit. And for those of you watching at home, you'll see, you guys don't need to hop into Foundry or anything like that. I just wanted to bring up the map so that people can kind of see. So let me go over here. So when we started the campaign, we started in Alewith Harbor, which I personally thought was kind of a fairly clever pun. So Alewith is a combination of a couple of different words in Elvish that essentially mean river ending. Which at the bottom of the continent is like a fairly massive river that ends at Alewith Harbor, and it connects Hobblehaven to Alewith Harbor. But Alewith Harbor also was under control of an elven mayor, which you guys never ended up meeting. But when you were there, you ran into a carriage that you knew was owned by Elfiel or taken or something like that. And he escaped on a boat over to Akari, which is one of the other continents. And I had it before the campaign ever started. The only thing I really knew is that I had Alowith Harbor in mind, and I had the boat ride in mind, and I knew I wanted you guys to get attacked by a kraken. That was the entire concept of the entire campaign, other than I wanted the big bad to be a druid, specifically an archdruid, because I had never seen that done before. And as I Googled around for inspiration on that, it seems like nobody had really ever done that in any sort of live play situation. Apparently it's notoriously very hard to make an archdruid a bad guy. So, you know,
I don't know. I hated
Yeah.
Pharaoh.
Yeah, I think we all hated that guy.
Oh, man.
Did it good?
Well, then I'm glad to hear that. So he was definitely supposed to be kind of the bad guy. Obviously, having him almost kill a child was a good way to introduce him. But also just having him show up and kind of poke fun at you guys and be like unapproachable was part of the idea. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So with Elfiel Montero, who was the guy that kidnapped Catherine Zeta-Gnomes, which for anybody who doesn't know, that was the love interest of Agnomeio Banderas. Obviously a take on the movie. So he hopped aboard a...
Yeah, not even close to being subtle. In the least.
Not even close. So he hopped aboard a ship and he went over to Knife's Edge. Now, you guys never made it to Knife's Edge, and this was not really your fault. There were a couple of different ways that you could have not encountered the Kraken. Something that you guys actually didn't know. And again, like, this is going to be an entire episode of me telling you guys things that just didn't happen. But one of the things that you guys didn't know, do you remember the priest that you met in Alowith Harbor, who had you like kind of kill off those, I think they were lightning mephits, in order to bring back Tinbrin, right? I forget his name, but he had actually planted a stone on the ship, and this stone specifically attracted krakens. And one of the things that was cool with him is that in the town, he was known for being able to prophesize when ships would be lost at sea. And the way that he was prophesizing these is he was hiding these stones aboard the ships to kind of increase his own thing. So that had you guys found the stone, which you could have done by checking out the captain's quarters, then that would not have happened. You wouldn't have attracted the Kraken and you would have made it to Knife's Edge.
How about that?
So would that only be if they like threw the stone off the ship?
Yeah, like I would have made it fairly obvious. I would have been like, you know, you found this thing, roll Arcana. It would have been like a 10. Like you guys probably would have figured it out.
I was gonna say, I don't think we would have associated with the priest, because I know he did something to the ship. I think I would have completely missed the fact that that's what he was doing.
Yeah, there were some hints that I had dropped at the time about him specifically. Like he was on board the ship when you guys first saw the ship. He like kind of came out of the captain's quarters. However, I distracted you with salt. Which was on purpose, you know. So I used to be a lot more clever with this game too, because so had you not run into the Kraken, what was going to happen is as soon as you got to Knife's Edge, if you actually think back to Zorro, you were going to run into a bunch of people who were enslaved by orcs. They were going to be in these cages. You were going to have like a whole thing with Elfiel Montero where you know, if you really just think about it, like I was pretty much going to copy the movie. Like he was going to blow up the entire camp and you had to either fight him or rescue everybody, you know, kind of thing. So, however, when none of that, actually, I guess I'll pause there because I feel like I'm going to talk the entire time, but feel free to interject. There's like so much stuff I want to tell you guys.
Oh, no, this is good. Yeah. This is great.
Oh, yeah. This is
We're learning a lot about what might have been.
About your plans.
So when you guys did not encounter Elfiel Montero, I will tell you the entire bush of Jilriel, I made up almost on the fly.
No kidding.
The whole thing with the lizards and everything like that happened because you guys didn't find the Kraken stone. And I was like, crap, I need to come up with something. So I'm still somewhat new to DMing, or at least I was when I first started this thing. So I was like, you know what? The Bush of Jilriel is kind of the perfect place for me to randomly roll a dungeon. And it was the first time I ever did that. I actually busted out the dice. I went through the Dungeon Master's Guide and I rolled stuff, and it was like, okay, you know, a straight corridor. Okay, what's in the corridor? This thing's in here. What does it smell like? It smells like, you know, whatever. The only thing I did without randomization was populated with monsters. And the whole bit about turning you guys into lizards, I think I made that up maybe like the day before it happened. It was
Really?
Yeah, like the
we were
whole
lizards for like half the game, it felt like.
I know.
Oh yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
god. Remember I was like pissed it was taking too long. I'm like, how long are we gonna be freaking these lizards? Let's go.
I love being a lizard. It was awesome.
I thought the lizard bit was cool.
I thought
enjoyed
Oh no, I loved it in the beginning.
Also,
Then I just
Booker getting to be a little cute alligator was so freaking
pretty great.
great.
That was pretty cool. He was a little albino
pretty-
alligator.
That was
It was
pretty.
hilarious.
Lizard nips are pretty
Yeah.
impressive too.
Right?
They
Yeah.
were.
that
So
was pretty
you actually
adorable.
you hit on a perfect point, Jason. So one of the things, and it was unavoidable, and I certainly don't blame any of you guys for this, playing the game in 2-hour chunks is really difficult. Planning 2 hours is much easier. However, getting like really immersed in like an hour and a half to 2 hour chunk when I know towards the end people are tired, that makes it really tough. So that was definitely part of the challenge that I came up with. But what I did is I said to myself, okay, what do I actually need to have in every episode? And it was like, I want to have a combat if it makes sense. Definitely has to be some sort of RP of some sort. And then ideally there should be an exploration. And those things are called the 3 pillars of D&D, essentially: exploration, social interaction, and combat. So I figured if I could fit all 3 of those things into every episode, it would be fantastic. Except there were a lot of episodes that didn't have all 3 of those things. And a lot of that was because of time constraints. But you guys, we kind of made it work anyway. So,
I feel like this is also very, like you explaining, like the planning and, the research about the 3 pillars and for every episode and stuff. Like, that should help the chat understand too, like how much work you were putting in every week's episode. And like anybody who's more familiar with D&D probably knows, normally it's played in like 3 to 4 hour sessions kind of thing. So it's like that you were doing that and trying to make a whole thing for each one.
So
it makes a lot of sense why this has become too much.
Thank you. Yeah. So one thing that I considered doing in order to kind of keep this going is switching us over completely to theater of the mind. But I don't like, obviously some channels like Critical Role, like they can do that. But I'm not Matt Mercer, right? So like having the ability to describe a scene in a way that we don't need maps, even just combat all completely in our heads. Had I started you all with that, maybe we could have made that work. But frankly, I'm not used to that. You guys aren't used to that. And the first place I didn't want to do it would be live streaming. So,
well, especially for me being new, like I would have been so lost and so confused. The maps were a huge help. And I see in the chat, B. Bauer says, I'd never seen a D&D game before, and this was epic. So
I think
for those of us that are new to it, it was super helpful.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and thank you, B. Bauer. It's I will say having the chat along with the game and watching you guys react to things was super encouraging. I loved every second of it. I loved when we dropped some random bomb and you guys were like blowing up the chat and like I know that usually there would only be like, let's even say be generous, like there 10 to 25 of you at a time, and still seeing the chat moving was like awesome. Yeah. So okay. So let me keep going for just a sec here. So when you guys were in the Bush of Jilriel, one thing that I had continuing to go was Catherine Zeta Gnomes needed to be somewhere. So what happened, in my mind is, okay, so the thing at Knife's Edge didn't happen, but she's still captured and she needs to be moved somewhere. So the Whispering Expanse, which again, people watching at home, you can kind of see. If you look on the screen, there's if you guys want to hop into Foundry and just be able to look at this along with me, that would be fine too. It's completely up to you. The Whispering Expanse is a huge, what do you call it? Like a prairie. Or like a big grassy area. Think almost like Game of Thrones with the I forget what they called it, but there was like a 7-day travel across a grassy wasteland.
Yeah, the Dothraki Sea or
the sea. Yes, exactly. The Red Sea or whatever they called it. Yeah. So the idea there is that there were centaur there as well. as well as plenty of orc. So had you guys made it to Knife's Edge, you would have likely traveled across the Whispering Expanse instead, and I would have had to figure something out with there. All I knew is that I wanted there to be centaur, and potentially there's a giant bird called a roc, R-O-C, which I thought would be kind of cool if it was like hunting you guys while you were crossing this place with absolutely nowhere to hide, and see how that played out. That was a minor idea just in case that had happened. So, okay. The Oasis of Serpents, I'm sure you guys probably noticed, but the Oasis of Serpents itself actually looked like a snake. And that was the whole idea, is that Helix was underneath the water there. Now, some of you may, I would be interested to know, and anybody watching this in the future, feel free to comment below too. The whole bit that played out in Helixia, and I guess I'll even just kind of skip over a lot of it right to the very end, after you guys killed Thorek, the Malevolent Mist, is when the whole city lit up as if there was a big sigil. I had hinted a bunch of times about the slaves kind of carving or dragging these boulders behind their necks and essentially carving the sigil into the ground without any of you knowing. That's straight out of Full Metal Alchemist, for anybody who's ever seen that. So I'm guessing based off the expressions.
I thought they were working on a plumbing system. I thought it was just like aqueducts or something. Sewage.
There was this whole bit. So Full Metal Alchemist it's an anime. I don't watch a whole lot of anime, but this one's like a really popular one, especially back in, I want to say like my mid-20s. I watched it, and the gist of it was, in order to do this particular magical thing, they had to kill a ton of people in order to make the Philosopher's Stone. And so this guy essentially used a city as kind of like the base, and then he carved a whole sigil across the entire city and then sacrificed everybody inside of the city. And I was like, that's a cool concept. Let me see if I can make that happen. So that's when everybody was like floating off of the ground, and the souls were leaving and their blood was leaving their body and all that stuff. And you guys were running out of there. That was what that was. Okay, I'll shut up again for a sec. Up until this point, I know that obviously, Adriana, you had joined at this point, but I don't think I've missed any major plot points. I'm trying to think.
You could be making this up for all I remember, honestly.
Yeah. So you said it wasn't until like you just kind of had to come up with the bush and
yeah. So I
like when did you come up with Helix then? Like,
well, so Helix was always intended as well. Actually. Okay. So good question though. So when one of the things I wanted to do was I didn't want to use the default Dungeons and Dragons pantheon, just because I didn't think. I wanted to be more creative than that. I had like all these aspirations, right? So I made up like 5 gods to start off with. And then I was like, well, I need a history of the world. And I called it the Lands of Dimidium. And Dimidium is a combination of a couple of Latin words that essentially means split earth. So the idea being that at one point, this whole world was essentially a Pangea concept. And then it got split the first time by Helix. And there was that whole prophecy that you guys had heard forever ago. And actually, I'm going to pause for a sec because I can actually play this. So that was the premonition that you guys saw within, I think it was like the 3rd or 4th episode. It was pretty early on.
Wasn't it in the little dungeon and Daffy, with the snake, the little snake head? Yeah.
Yep. And the owl bear and all that.
Yep.
Oh my God, the owl bear!
I know. I probably went a little too fast.
That was like our first big battle.
The owl bear was really fun to plan. Especially like I actually loved your reaction, Jason. Like you had kind of come to just fear whatever the owl bear could be.
Yeah.
You were just like, I don't know what that is, but it sounds terrifying. I remember you saying that more than a couple times.
Yeah, because even just like seeing an owl, you're like, ooh, that thing is kind of cool looking. bear is terrifying with wings and then claws, and oh my god, like a bear's enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm going to go way far back here. I should have said this at the beginning, but when you guys were in Alawith Harbor and you found Pharaoh's cave and you killed the owlbear, you found the extra little hidden thing, which, by the way, you didn't have to find. I definitely dropped some pretty strong hints, but had you guys not gone in the water or peeked around some of the vines that were hanging on the wall, you actually wouldn't have found Pharaoh right away. And you wouldn't have even... You would never have found Tinbrand. He would have died. All that stuff. But what certainly could have happened is, and what I probably would have hinted you guys towards is actually going towards Hobblehaven, and rather than getting on the boat. And what was going to happen there, that Hobblehaven was actually designed to be potentially the first place that you saw what Pharaoh was capable of, because Hobblehaven, I believe it has a dam, or at least I think I was going to have it have a dam, which is holding back quite a bit of the river, and he was essentially going to destroy that dam with the his whole motivation was like reclaim the land. You know, like he really hated gnomes because gnomes build into things and they explode things and they just are chaos all over the place. Yeah, like they're kind of the anti-nature. So he was gonna pretty much destroy Hobblehaven.
Oh boy.
And so that would have been a whole nother thing. But that was a very minimal chance that would have actually happened. But I had it planned out. Yeah.
Nora, that could have been your big chance to be like the real hero of Hobblehaven.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely could have been.
Yeah.
Actually, one thing that I found super challenging about being a DM here too is wanting to do certain things, but then being almost restricted by what level you guys are. Because monsters could be scaled, but like concepts can't. Like if you guys roll crappy on your charisma check because you only have a +1 to it because you're only level 4, you know, that's not something that can be helped. But at level 15, it would be. So that was an interesting thing to try to accommodate for.
Mm-hmm.
Do some campaigns start people out at higher levels? Is that like a thing that more? Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, actually, starting people at level 3 is very common because at that point everybody gets a chance to pick kind of their subclass. So, speaking of subclasses, so this is something that we'll get back to what happened to Catherine Zeta Gnomes because there was one more chance for her to show up, actually, that you guys missed. But we'll get to that in a minute.
We missed all of them?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
That's kind of impressive in its own right.
So, well, actually, I guess I'll just tell you. When Ragnar went overboard, had you looked like really closely at him falling, which never really happened, you pretty much, I think it was Clifton actually was out with her when that happened, and he didn't bother really looking over the side. He pretty much just interacted with Alicia or Elsa, I think Alicia. Had he looked over the side, he actually would have noticed a caravan that was down below, and that caravan would have been transporting Catherine Zeta Gnomes, which could have hinted you guys to maybe stop at Gleam Shadow, which was one of the last decisions that you guys made. Gleam Shadow was the city that I told you right at the very end of the last episode was totally covered in thorns. And what happened is
Knobolas was just trying to hook up, as always.
He totally was. He's like, oh, your husband's dead now. How's that working? So, I also like the idea that you would be like, oh, you killed your husband? That sounds tempting.
I wanted him before the husband. Screw him.
So he would have landed on the caravan?
No, he was dead. He was dead either way because he didn't have the balls on him. Which is a wonderful saying. But it was the idea was more that I would have probably made it a point to be like, oh, you notice there's like a bunch of orcs and like whatever, and they seem to be heading towards Gleam Shadow or something like that. It would have been pretty obvious that something was up with them. And Alessio, we're going to get to your father as well very shortly. Not a whole lot was going to happen with him, but I had a couple of ideas. But the piece I want to get to...
I was going to say, was there going to ever be a point where I actually meet him or find him?
So you and I were going to talk a little bit about that before it actually happened, because I wasn't sure if you wanted it to happen. Like, it seemed like obviously you wanted some revenge, but I I was interpreting your story as much that it could have been about revenge, but it also could have been you almost stepping into your uncle's shoes and discovering what you could be like as a rogue and kind of leaving your past behind you. The only thing that could have mattered, and I had it in mind that your uncle and your sister were going to somehow be together. Like he had taken her to like get her away essentially and keep her safe. And I was going to have that work into somewhere, but I that was actually one of my bigger struggles, as I wasn't sure what to do with that storyline.
No, I know. I mean, honestly, I thought it could have just been me, like, Alessio, like a certain point in the journey and our quest, like Alessio, I feel like maybe would have figured out, like, I'm never going to find my dad. And maybe that's okay. Maybe it's time for me just to go home and not worry about, like once our ultimate, task ended and we kind of go our separate ways, like maybe at some point he realizes I don't need to kill my dad because I just helped save, the world and where we are. And I have my new friends now, and that's enough for me. Now I just got to go take care of my sister, so.
Yeah. I think that would have been an awesome wrap up for Alessio. There, I had one idea that I thought was kind of a good, I don't know the right word, it's just escaping me, but essentially replacement is, I don't know which town it was going to happen in, but there was going to be a time where I was going to send you on a solo mission and you were going to be sneaking around some sort of rooftop and your quarry or target or whatever was going to be kind of either escaping from you or about to get out of your range where you wouldn't have known where they were going to go. At which point you would have presented with a choice of continue after your target, or you were going to hear some yelling kind of like off to the side coming out of a house that you didn't know. And the idea being you could have rescued somebody from some sort of domestic abuse, or followed your target. And that was going to be your choice to make. And that was about the only thing I really had. I thought it would be more about redemption, which was actually, I'm going thought to thought. Redemption was the overall concept that I wanted to have across this entire campaign. And yours is a little bit more straightforward. It was give you a chance to fix somebody else's situation where you couldn't fix yours. Agnomeio was going to have redemption in essentially becoming this hero that he wanted to be. That also is a little bit on the nose. Knobolas was going to be quite a bit more subtle, I guess.
Knobolas needed a lot more redemption than anybody else.
Knobolas kept making it worse for himself.
Listen,
I really was hoping to meet Knobolas's mother in like a spiritual form.
Yeah,
I know. I think we were all looking forward to that.
No,
yeah.
Once we get to the point of like telling what we think for our characters, I have a whole like imagined scenario that I want to.
Well, so I would almost rather hear that first before I tell you what I had planned for your character, because I'm curious. I'm curious if it would have at all aligned, because I very much doubt it would.
Okay.
So
I'll wait till you're ready.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's wait like 2 more minutes. So, you guys, you finished your whole Oasis of Serpents. You killed Thorak. You escaped from Helixia, and then you started hearing from your mother again, which obviously had talked to you a couple of times. But her message to you was pretty much, you need to come to Voltanus. Yeah, no, Voltanus. Yeah. Which I will never forget when you guys were like, no, it totally says Voltanus. I was like, no, there's no way I would do that. I totally made a typo.
We're not just being children. It's spelled that way.
It's not a Voltanus. So when you're actually, this person who was talking in your head was claiming to be your mother. Whether it actually was or not was never actually revealed to you.
Oh wow! Okay.
The good news is, I will tell you, it actually was.
Okay, I was like, damn! Don't throw that twist in there. I never even doubted.
That's actually funny, because your understanding is that your mother was dead. That was what you had kind of put forth to me as your backstory. However, I disagreed. So what you had said was that your mother and your father had you. Your father ended up raising you to a point until you essentially left home because reasons that I kind of forget. At which point you kind of became.
I mean, I guess. I mean, to be fair, the backstory did say that my mother died in childbirth, but that could have just been what my dad told me.
Exactly. And that was what I went off of. Actually what happened here is that your mother was the archmage in charge of the entirety of Volantis. So she was going to be in charge, and the idea that she had been pregnant with you out of, with essentially a non-wizard was a point of shame for her. And she had used magic essentially to conceal the fact that she was pregnant. She had you, your father kept you, and she kind of just abandoned you. So that was going to be, once you got to Volantis, other than you guys learning a lot more about Helix and those, three or four other massive elementals that you learned about first in Helixia, that was going to be what Volantis arc was going to be about, was you learning about these giant elementals, you learning about your mother having been this archmage, she coming clean with you because you guys need to save the world. And it was going to be very matter of fact. She was pretty much just going to be like, I couldn't take care of you. I couldn't even acknowledge you as my kid. Ignore all that. You need to save the world.
Yeah, that's such a twist in my story, because I always thought my dad was the one that didn't care about me, but actually he tried. Maybe it's just the torment of her leaving him.
Yeah, well, that was a big part of it. She had to abandon both of you in this version of things. But I'm curious, what did you have in mind for your character? I'm going to stop talking for a moment here.
I was thinking, I guess, this is all within the past 24 hours. This is about when we found out that we're wrapping it up. So, my latest challenge by my, what do you call the spirit that's over me?
Oh my gosh. So your patron, but Selgradan,
yeah, was to give him the soul of a child. And
correct. Yep.
I know, we joked about that, but I think what I imagined happening is getting close, feeling like, okay, I need to do this, and having a lot of internal troubles about that and turmoil. Mm-hmm. I would like to have imagined that before I did that, my mom spoke to me and something that revealed her exact location. Mm-hmm. That was come now. Basically a reversal of what happened at the beginning of my story, where she told me to run to get away from the guy that was having me before.
Yep.
It was going to be a situation where it was basically that was recalled. She told me to do something specific, and in my head, I feel like it would lead me to her grave, which in my mind she was dead, so I didn't know that story.
Yep.
And I do have a spell that allows me to speak with the dead. And I was going to talk to her there, and basically something to wrap up my career. Again, 24 hours and how many times.
No, I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
She would tell me something that would allow me to detach myself from my patron and just go back to living normal life. And I think that, and I would have chosen to do it because I wasn't going to sacrifice a child. That was what I think Knobolas would have done.
I like that a lot.
He spent the rest of his life in a brothel, and it was great.
Well, you already made one. You made one difficult choice. You may as well treat yourself.
So just crazy rambling thoughts of what I would do with my character.
I like that a lot. The whole deal with Selgradan. So I knew that the intent was to try to, you very much played your character as the charismatic warlock, and I liked that a lot. So I came up, all right, he's going to try to convince people to join Selgradan's group here, but they need to be powerful enough. So you were going to meet essentially a young wizard or mage or something like that in Volantis, possibly a few of them, and give you a choice of who it would make sense for you to try to bring over. And that person that you chose would have impacted how Selgradan worked out. I didn't have an overall plot with Selgradan, which might seem a little disappointing. I just hadn't gotten there yet because it wasn't one of the tricks you learn as a DM is unless it really, really matters to the story, make it up as you go along. Otherwise it's just way too much to try to do all at once. But once he got that child, he was essentially going to get considerably more powerful. Speaking of more powerful, okay, the Chalice of Kings that you guys had been carrying around that nobody ever bothered to do an Arcana check on. So, the Chalice,
really?
Yeah, you guys you never tried to attune to it. You never tried to figure out what it did.
Wait, did we have a chance to? Did it? Just to clarify, because so he got it. Did we? Yeah, there was that whole thing where it was invisible and he made up whatever.
The Nothic?
And the escape, right? While we were in the room. He made
in the mine.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Erngar Zuik. Yeah. Yep.
And as we came out, when Gorzuic was on fire.
Yes.
And then we got on the ship, right? And then the chalice is, I don't know where the chalice is.
So, well, I mean, when I got that thing, I suck at Arcana, so I didn't even think to check it. It's like that's not in my special skills.
I feel like Agnomeio's whole thing with that was just like, oh, hey, Alessio needs a cup. All right, let's get him a cup. All right, he's got the cup. All right, we're good.
I totally agree. I actually think I think the fact that none of you thought to check why it was magical, I actually didn't think was out of character, and so I didn't push it.
I just went along with it, like Ed said, it was just like, okay, this is needed.
Knobolas was just like, I just want to drink out of that thing and look sexy.
I just
So had you asked, so Serafina and I think maybe Elowin or one of the other people on the ship, two people on the ship knew the identify spell. And had you asked them or chosen to kind of spend some time with it, you would have learned that the Chalice of Kings actually grants eternal life if you drink anything from it. And that's why it's such a sought-after thing. And actually, Alessio, that's why your Nexori wanted you to steal it, because this whole idea...
She wanted eternal life?
She didn't want eternal life?
I don't know. We're having the same thought process, but he literally died.
Yeah,
but he lost the chalice though. So
what happened? What? Say that again.
With the king died off the boat. He fell off.
He did. Yes. Well, so
you have to keep drinking from it like every week.
No,
or something?
it's eternal life. It's not invulnerability.
Okay.
It's like you become immortal. But good question. So with the what was I going to say? So what is your brotherhood? What is your help me, Alessio. The group that you are with is the Shadow of Burkoth.
Yeah, Shadow of Burkoth.
Yeah. So Burkoth he is a demon, or a devil. I think he was a devil. Either way, it's this thing called a Glabrazu. It's out of the D&D manual, but it's essentially think of almost like a lobster demon. It has like these big claws, and it has actually got 4 arms. But the idea was that your person was a devil and Knobolas is a demon, and those two are just generally at odds with each other. So there would have been some sort of play in there where the two of you would have been egged on by your individual people. Had you finished stealing the Chalice of Kings, you would have gotten essentially another promotion. One of the things I had come up with, actually, I liked this a lot with the Shadow of Burkoth. I came up with different levels of members. So each level came with additional perks. So that ring that you were wearing, every time that you leveled up, essentially, you got additional perks. So like the first time you got, I think, a +1 to stealth and a +1 to sleight of hand. You're a better thief, And then the next one would have been additional slots towards that, as well as maybe like dexterity saving throws or something like each time would have given you more. And had you stolen that and found a way to get it over to your patron, that would have worked out really well. You would have ascended again to, I think it's called a Whisper of Burkoth, and they're essentially the assassins of underneath this guy. So they're sent out to kill whoever is needed to be killed. So you would have gotten some additional perks with that too. I like the idea of leveling up naturally as one does in D&D, but also giving additional skills that fit into the theme of the campaign. It's something I did with the test campaign I did before I started running with you guys, and what I wanted to do with you as well. Yeah. All right. Sorry. I've been talking so much. There's just so much of a dump I want to.
That's all good.
Yeah. So, Adriana, this is actually going again back to the Bush of Jilriel. After you guys left, and remember if you met Chester, the tree.
Yeah.
So you never did anything with the seed that he gave you.
That was on purpose, to be clear.
Okay. Tell me about that. I'm curious.
Well, it was more just like I was actually hoping like the seed comes up. I keep actually copy and pasting it. Like I have a Notion template for all of this.
Yeah.
And so I keep like pasting certain things into like the next session or whatever, so that I won't forget to like check the area and see if it would be a good area for planting like a seed, because like Erngorzuk was, rock and hidden from the sun, and I was like, well, I can't get there, and then we're on a ship, and it was pretty much like on the way to Erngorzuk that I got it. So it's like, I was maybe at full.
Yeah.
For me, it's just Voltanus.
Volantis. Yeah.
Volantis.
Yeah. That would have been an interesting place to plant it, actually, but only because just the idea. So one thing I was going to have happen.
It moves around, so I didn't know if that would really be a smart use of it.
I had it in mind that depending on where you planted it, it would either sprout immediately, or like Chester told you, it might take a couple of years to really grow into anything. Volantis is not something I would have considered, but had you done that, immediately I would have had it grow. Like, it would have grown like instantly into this giant tree and just started wreaking havoc. It would have been fantastic.
I was also mildly worried about Volantis because I knew it was like a floating thing. And I was like, what if it grows and he just like walks off it, like it's a tree, and doesn't think like that's a possibility. Yep. So just also a part of me, like as a major Lord of the Rings fan, Bilbo got brought home an acorn to plant in the Shire, and so part of me was just like, well, I could just bring it back home whenever I get home, whatever home is, and like plant it wherever I end up, and maybe. Make like a whole new set.
It's funny that you say that. So I hadn't actually watched the Hobbit movies when that episode happened. I know we talked about that. I had only just watched them somewhat recently, but I did actually have it in mind that there was a chance you would keep it with you the entire campaign, but more just out of lack of remembering about it. And I thought as part of the wrap up at the end that it would be like, oh, and you plant the tree outside of your house or whatever. Like that had occurred to me. So that's kind of funny that you were thinking about that as well. Yeah. The Jewel in the Mountain Crown. Well, actually, sorry, let me go back to your question about Erngorzuk. So there was a way for you guys to have saved Erngorzuk that didn't happen. I
was so hung up on that.
I will actually say, I don't remember who I was telling. It might have been my wife, and that's also she I think she got tired of hearing about the game because she's like the only person I could talk to about this. I will say confidently that I will say confidently, every single time that you guys could have made a good choice, I don't think you did. You didn't always make the worst choice, but I don't think you ever made the best choice. So
when we left Erngorzuk and everything was on fire, we could have saved it?
No, but you could stop those little. You could have saved it beforehand. So do you guys remember? Got it. So there were two different ways to save Erngorzuk. Number one, do you remember, actually, I think it was Agnomeio and Alessio. Both of you ran into a sheet of paper that had a 3-clawed paw print on it when you were walking around. You might not remember this, but I had a graphic for it and everything. Which should have been a hint. But the idea was this was essentially a rallying think like people painting A's on things for like anarchist, and this was from the kobolds. They were essentially planning their uprising. Had you guys kind of dug into that in any way, you would have found that the kobolds were starting to have this uprising. Now, TaLin, you actually had the first chance to prevent this whole thing from happening with your special that you did, which is just you, when you were in the spinning spores, which was that cave. So this is an overarching thing as well. Pharaoh's main weapon is these giant fungus, mesmerizing mushroom things that he can make grow from the Underdark. So those mushrooms were in the spinning spores, and that was what was driving everybody crazy. Had you investigated that, or possibly gone to the platinum, the library, and started asking about those a bit more, you might have learned more about that and possibly been able to do something. You guys also spent a really long time inside of the vault, the Sunstone Vault. And while you were in there, there was actually at the very start, there were 3 different pathways that you could take at the absolute start of that dungeon. One of them to the far south ended up going over to a statue, which was essentially I think it was like a like a tribute to any of the miners who had died while digging out that area. And then to the far north was actually up to the vault, but there was one like 45 degrees, and that would have taken you further into the vault, and it would have had you run into all of the kobolds that were gathering to essentially, like, you could have avoided the whole thing had you taken the one out of, you chose 2 out of the 3, and the one would have saved Erngorzuvik.
again, that tracks.
But would we have gotten the chalice? Would we have gotten the chalice?
You would not have found the chalice, but the chalice only mattered to Alessio.
Right, yeah.
So that was part of the choice too.
Yeah, there was no way I was getting that chalice by myself with everything waiting in there for me. Jesus,
oh, for sure. Yeah. I liked that dungeon a lot, actually.
This is the problem with teaming up with a thief, is that you get distracted by going after some freaking chalice. Yeah. You don't take all these stupid kobold things.
Well, I definitely took advantage of the fact that when you guys were being, when you were not making decisions, Jason actually usually jumped in to make a decision, which was awesome. And actually, Jason, just personally, I appreciate that you did that. But because Alessio was the one usually making those choices, I was like, if he's going to continue to make these choices, I'm going to play into that a bit and let other people say no to him or just go with it. So that was definitely something I counted on. I counted on 2 things. I counted on Alessio doing whatever his mission was. If it was even anything slightly less than convenient, then like he would do his mission. And I planned on Agnomeio doing whatever the hell he was going to do. Like, I was like, is there a table? Agnomeio's going to be on that table.
So what was supposed to happen to Agnomeio in the end? I'm just curious. Was Agnomeio going to hit the Hollywood stardom of Middle Earth, or wherever the hell we were?
Well, so actually, let me rush through the rest of what I had planned, because there's not a whole lot more, and then I'm dying to hear what you guys would have reacted to this whole thing. So, excuse me, we talked about you guys being up on the skyship, and then you were heading towards Erngor Kazord, which I did throw this up on the Patreon, but just at this point, let me see if I can show you. So, hopefully it'll focus. So this is Erngor Kazord, and I'll kind of talk about this real quick. I'm actually going to go so it's just me, so the audience can see this a little better. So the top level is kind of like where the king hangs out. This is the residential area. This was called the Underhalls, and that's where like the market was and a bunch of other stuff. And then this was the mines. Now there was going to be a dragon down here for you guys to fight. And it was going to be, I actually had this idea to use, it's called a Elder Brain Dragon. And it's somewhat new to D&D. And the idea is that mind flayers, who are these like, they're the guys with like the tentacles on the face. I think I've shown you pictures of them before. They are all controlled by this gigantic brain. Think of Metroid. And that's called an Elder Brain. So the Elder Brain Dragon is what happens when one of those Elder Brains is like, hey, you know what? I'd rather move around rather than just being a brain. Let me attach to a dragon and then make that everybody's problem.
That sounds good.
So
was that the peach?
That wasn't at the...
Sorry.
No, so that was an ancient red dragon named Fireclaw. Who also would have been a huge problem. He was mostly there to mess with your airship or potentially be a future boss. But I looked into the Elder Brain Dragon and I was like, well, this thing is going to just destroy you guys completely. And I didn't trust that you would avoid it. So instead I was going to have it be this brand new concept I had come up with, which was essentially going to be like a fungal dragon. So it was going to have some powers of those fungus that Pharaoh had been raising up. The idea is that Erngor Kazord had been infiltrated by Underdark denizens because Halix had essentially shaken the earth, flooded the bottom layer of Erngor Kazord, so the Underdark kind of raced up to avoid being flooded, and now they took over Erngor Kazord. And you guys would have absolutely been able, this is actually where we were going to go tonight originally, you guys would have been able to save that city by defeating the dragon and like essentially destroying the mushrooms.
Nice.
But it would have been it would have been tough. It would have probably been like a 30% chance of you guys fully saving the city. What I was trying to finally have happen is you actually also would have found out that Pharaoh was the one doing this with the mushrooms. So what would have happened is you guys would have finally realized that Pharaoh is actually the guy that needs your attention, and then started worrying about him. However, at this point, Helix now is going to be, we're getting way into the future at this, not even way, like maybe a couple months from now. You guys finally would have made it to Volantis. You would have learned about the damage that Helix had been doing, where I would have shown you an updated map of all 3 continents, like really having a lot of problems. You would have found out that, you remember the floating kind of water based part of Volantis that had broken off? You guys docked your ship. It was floating, but only just above the ocean. So
I thought that was all of it. I thought that's what Volantis did.
That was part of it. So that was actually like a small chunk that had broken off of the bottom of Volantis. So Volantis had 4 of those, and all 4 of them were devoted to the elemental plane of water, fire, earth, and air. So you guys found the one devoted to water, and you killed off, I think it was called Hydroxus or something. It was like a water elemental. And Knobolas, forever you've been carrying around a corrupted pearl of power. However, that corrupted pearl of power would have been fixed in Volantis. You would have realized that that was something that could give you control of, actually, sorry, that one, I'm remembering now. So the corrupted pearl of power had controlled Helix at some point, as he was essentially the embodiment of the elemental plane of water, being a water serpent. You guys were then going to take your skyship, go find the other 3 locations, which, if you remember, in that flying fortress, I forget what to call it. It would call it the school, right? So like the flying school, you found a map that showed a couple of bright dots that showed up across the surface of.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
So those all showed where the other locations of the chunks that broke off of Volantis were. You also had something like that on your skyship. You would have been
that's what I thought you were referencing. Yeah.
Yep. So you would have been able to use that on your skyship to help you track down these other locations. We would have had some really cool like fire, earth, and air elemental style dungeons where you would have think Final Fantasy 1 essentially found the orbs of power, right? or elemental orbs of whatever. And after getting all of those, you would have been able to just straight up ride those giant elemental creatures that we introduced in Helixia into battle against Helix. So 3 of you were going to be able to command them, and 1 of you would have had to figure out something else to do, possibly helming the skyship or something like that. Like it would have been your choice of who's commanding all 3 of these and who's going to not, and what are you going to do. And then all 4,
Valaris, and and Avalon. Those
yes, that sounds right. Yep. And those are actually based off these things called they're I think not myrmidons. They're a monster out of the D&D manual, but they're essentially these they are the king of that elemental plane. Like the massive monster. They're all almost as tough as you get in D&D. So the ending thing would have been a fight against Helix. Using all of them, Helix would have been stronger than any 1 or 2 of you at a time. I hadn't worked out that fight entirely because obviously it was quite a ways away. But the idea would be that even all 3 plus the skyship would have been a formidable fight against just Helix. And Pharaoh was going to be essentially riding Helix. So he would have been doing his archmage stuff as well.
My question was just going to be were we ever going to actually fight Helix? But I could see having the elementals at our disposal if we completed those missions would have helped.
Definitely. I kind of envisioned it as being at some point, let's say, I don't know, whoever was piloting the Phoenix, you dive down, you attack Helix, and at that point you have some damage being done to Helix and some to the Phoenix, and then you have 2 or 3 turns for that individual person to fight against Pharaoh. So I wanted, in hindsight, or not even in hindsight, thinking about it out loud, I would have wanted you guys to be able to fight more as a team against Pharaoh, like in the moment. But I liked the idea. Maybe it would have been phases or something like that. Like each one of you having your moment to shine against just Pharaoh and seeing what you would have done. And then probably something else where all of you fight against him. Maybe he would have, like druids can turn into animals. Maybe he would have turned into a dragon or something like that. Like you could do true polymorph and he would have turned into something else. And that would have been roughly the end of the campaign.
Yeah.
Cute.
So-
Wow.
Yeah, that's not work at all. That's great.
I once explained a lot of this to my dad, he's like 68. I want to say he's not terribly old. Given I'm 40, so he's less than, I don't know how old he is, but he's over 65. And he said to me, he was like, all of that was in your head, you know. I was like for years, you know. So clearly, I remembered most of that off the top of my head, right? So yeah. This is a constant in my mind. Okay, now I would love to hear what you guys would have done either at any point after where we currently are or at the end of the campaign.
Quick question: could we have stopped Pharaoh from releasing Helix to begin with? Like, would there have been anything?
Good question. Very unlikely, but yes. So when Daffy was still around, and Pharaoh came to her and got the book back, the fact that you guys took the book, you were always supposed to read the book. Taking the book was likely and, you know, kind of dependent on the story, but it didn't have to happen. Had you read the book or not past whatever I think the book, you know what it was? You guys took the book because you couldn't read it, but all you had to do was say the word Helix in order to open it, which like, I was like, oh, you look at the front of the book, it says the word Helix on it. Oh, you look at the spine of the book, it has a big snake on it. And then you were like, huh. And so for the next like 6-7 episodes or something, I literally kept waiting for any one of you to say the word Helix, and not a single time did that happen.
Weird.
Yeah, and like had somebody said that, the book was going to glow green and it was going to be like very obvious that something had happened. I think I finally
Did he make her promise not to read it?
I don't remember that, but maybe. I know that at some point I pretty much was like, so Molly, like, what's on the book? like what's that word that you might think, you know, whatever. So
That's pretty crazy.
yeah, so you definitely could have stopped Pharaoh from bringing Helix to life, or back to life, but it would have been very difficult. A lot of it probably would have happened during the fight with Thorek. Had you guys focused more on Pharaoh than on Thorek, who was purposely chained. That way, if you decided to go around the back of him, he couldn't do much about it. Then maybe you could have stopped it, but he probably would have been brought back up some other way. It was pretty core to the story for Helix to get resurrected.
I gotta know, were you planning on bringing back what's his name that kept showing up every freaking
yes yes, okay.
Oh,
all right, so I am so glad you asked. Okay, so important name, Vutha. So Vutha the Drowned is what his name ended up being.
Friggin' Vutha.
So I will freely admit, I think Alessio got a little bit of a bad rap with Vutha because it kind of wasn't really his fault, but it also kind of was. Like Vutha was like he made the mistake and it was ultimately his fault, but he totally blamed you for it. So
for sure.
Well, so actually Adriana kind of put a whatever she kind of what's the word? She ruined what I had going with Vutha, not on purpose. So I wrote like well, actually, I used AI to write a book about revenants, and I think I gave that to you, and then good. And then you read it, and then when you were relaying it out to the team, you said something to the effect of, which was probably in the book, and I just didn't realize, they could only come back basically once a month, like once every new moon, which was not the intent. He was supposed to come back basically like after every time he dies, I rolled a D4, and that was how many days it takes him to come back. And then anytime after that, if you ran into like a puddle, he would come out. He always had to come out of water. That was the only limitation I gave myself.
It felt like no matter what we did, he was coming
I think
back.
it said something like "as the full moon shines" or something.
Yeah.
That the Revenant appears, and so I was like, "Oh, gotcha!" Like,
it was funny though, because once you said that, I was like, well, I kind of wrote myself into a corner, and I got lazy, and I used AI to write this for me, so I guess I'll just deal with it. But I was like, he'll show up at least one more time, and it'll probably be at a terrible moment, and that will be funny. So,
but it was like basically you had to do something to like make it feel like it had gotten justice, or like convince it.
Yeah,
and I remember we had not come up with a way for how to make it feel like it had gotten even.
Yeah, there was a way that you were able to stop him entirely, and I hinted at it a couple of times, but this is one of those things that's tough, especially like again going back to the whole 2-hour thing. If we were playing for like extensive amount of time, it would have made sense for you to be like, you know what, I'm gonna go over to Glen Draconic, which I love that name, and I'm gonna go find Vutha's family, because he had talked about those ash blossoms that had grown outside of his house. He was growing them outside of his store, and the idea would have been you guys go there. I actually had worked with, it wasn't with TaLin, because you and I worked on Falstar. I think maybe I did it by myself. I had defined what Glen Draconic looked like, because if you showed up there, I wanted to have a plan. You could have gone there.
The times in between, just going like you said, playing 2 hours and and then waiting a week or two. I know me personally, like I like blanked out everything that I did except like the big moments.
It was certainly hard, and I don't blame you guys whatsoever for that either, because I'm thinking about this stuff all the time, and I'm expecting you guys to think about it when we're playing, which is fair. So had you gone to?
I felt like we could have done our due diligence and had I think if we were smart about it, we could have done like a secret pre-meeting before even doing even like before Monday night. Like I don't know, for half hour on Sunday night, we just all get together as a team and be like, okay, what's in our inventory? Where are we? What have we not done? Like that would have probably been a smart thing to do, but we just
It's funny you say
again,
that.
We're not living, eating, and breathing it like you are.
True. Yeah. It's funny that you say that. So I had started getting a little frustrated that you guys had stuff in your inventory that was important and that you guys weren't remembering. So what I was going to do, you know how I have that whole intro video that plays while everybody's kind of gathering or whatever. I was actually going to have separate slides that were like the items that you guys have in your inventory, like being like TaLin found this chestnut from an animated tree or whatever. Or
I think like one of
sending you a screenshot of my Notion page.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, but actually
that chestnut.
That was one of the minor things.
I remember the last episode we were on, and we were fighting one of the flying dragons, and I was like looking for like arrows and stuff like that, and I looked at my inventory. I'm like, I had a lot of cool stuff. Can I use any of this? I remember like realizing like what I had. I was like, oh, okay, I got some stuff here, but
I don't think you guys used any of the potions that you got from Snortimer's birthday.
I think we used those. Remember, like we got the different color mushrooms.
The red and the green.
Yeah, I tried to use mine a couple times, and Bill was like, "No, that's not going to help you here." So I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah. Well, so part of the problem was I'm looking at the items that I have designed here. It looks like I've lost them at this point, but the one of them was like, I think it was like a haste mushroom, and the other one was going to make you stronger or something like that. But the problem was that, and this is partly my own fault, like you had to brew it into a tea. The idea was you were supposed to be prepping for whatever you were going to do. And because it, as we just discussed, it was not on the top of your mind, it would rarely be like we'd start and you'd be like, oh, we're heading to a fight. You know what? I have that mushroom. We should brew that into a tea. Yeah.
Well, because the one we almost used it for the dragon. Or not dragon.
Yep.
Whatever it was tied up that we could have avoided with Halix. And Thorak.
Yep.
And because it helped make you resistant to poison, and we knew it was a poison.
That's what it was. Yes. Yep.
Then I was all set. I was like, I've got this mushroom. We're gonna do that. And you're like, you have to brew the tea for 10 minutes.
Yep.
Ahead of time. And I was like, well,
what I should have done, and And I kind of wish I had done it in the moment just to reward you for like having thought of it. Cause this, like, as you would imagine, I have gotten wicked deep into YouTube about D&D, right? So there's a lot of, tips and tricks that you could do. So something like that where you're like, oh, I just remembered I have that mushroom. Can I like do something with it? Instead of being like, oh, well, you could brew it for the tea to get the full, I should have been like, you know what? You eat the mushroom and you get like half the effect. You're resistant to it instead of immune or something. Like I should have, little things like that. You want to reward people doing what you want them to do rather than just being too stringent with the rules, which I tried not to be too much, but occasionally it mattered. So, okay. Let's do this.
I have to jump off here soon. So
I was just about to say, so Alessio, we kind of talked a little bit about what would have happened with your character as far as you probably wouldn't have run into your father, but you would have had that opportunity to like kind of redeem yourself.
Yep.
I think that you would have probably become some sort of very high member of the Shadow of Brakoth. And I did want to have there be an option for you to travel literally to hell and go either communicate or fight that guy, to get the chalice back, in order to earn eternal life for yourself or your sister or whatever you wanted. That was kind of what I had in mind for the chalice.
Cool.
So,
that's pretty damn cool.
Agnomeio, so what would you have done after you had saved the world, the hero of Hobblehaven?
So I guess it kind of depends on how things went down, because had I met Catherine Zeta-Gnomes before or after, because I was thinking what would be really funny is for me to have been running across this whole the whole world, running after her, pining after her, and then when I finally rescue her, she's just kind of like, oh, thanks, all right, I'll see you back at home. And then it's like, well, what am I gonna do with myself? What am I gonna, I got nothing. Basically my whole story has kind of been me being a braggart, and really I don't have much to show for it. And I would have liked, I was thinking what I think would have been the best way for it to end for Agnomeio would be to go back and like teach Twerk Brand or Tin Brand,
yep,
like the ways of Noro, and kind of and actually do some good, and with Tin Brand actually do some good in the world instead of just being about himself. I think that would have been a fitting end for Agnomeio's story.
Totally agree. That would have been awesome. Yeah. Actually, before we pick on the next part, there was one thing I forgot about. I mean, there's probably a dozen things I forgot about, but Pyroxis and Rhymegeist. If you remember when you guys found those swords, there was a plaque that basically talked about two brothers that had fought each other or something like that. They were brothers. They were like awesome together, and then power corrupted them and they ended up fighting. If you remember, at one point, I think Agnomeio, you might have been the only one that had this happen. Every natural 20 that you rolled was keeping a tab or tally over on my side. Once either one of you hit 5, you guys would have been possessed by your swords and had to fight each other.
That would have been fun.
Alessio and Agnomeio. So I thought that would have been, and it wouldn't have ended in a player death or anything like that, but it would have ended in the sword that lost becoming a mundane sword.
Oh wow, that's kind of cool. Yeah, I would have hated to have fought my brother in Rapier.
I know, brother in Rapier.
Yeah.
And you guys completely influenced that entire choice of starting to call yourselves brothers in Rapier. I was like, 2 brothers, elementals, let's fucking go.
So, it was very fitting. I mean, it made
a
lot of sense for me to have the fiery, chaotic sword, and for Alessio to have the slightly
patient,
more patient one.
The cold, icy, I don't want to talk to anybody type of thing.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One thing that drove me crazy is that TaLin took your flying daggers, Alessio, and despite me being like, those might be for somebody else, she's like, no, I want them. But I was researching what's like the best magic item for this level rogue, and it was like, oh, if you can give him something that lets him kind of throw things based off the way rogues work, they actually get like a main hand and an offhand, so they actually have two attempts.
Agnomeio got all the cool things. Okay?
I know.
You did, yeah. Throwing blades in front of me. I'm gonna throw the blade. I want the blade.
Yeah, but I was like,
machetes.
Yeah, you did. I know. I feel real bad. I liked those machetes a lot. Those were going to be really cool, and I feel bad that it ended like that right at that moment.
Yeah.
So TaLin. What would TaLin have done after the campaign?
She definitely would have written a book.
I saw that in the. Oh, actually, you wrote that in the chat. Yeah.
Yep. That was it, yeah. I definitely would. Yeah. Like, honestly, like, I think a part of the campaign was, trying to keep it entertaining, keep it moving and stuff. And so, like, what you were saying before about, like, often Jason would jump in and be like, let's just do this thing or whatever. Mm-hmm. And often it was like, well, I want to keep the thing moving and we have a small amount of time. So, okay. But I feel like otherwise, TaLin would have just been like, recording lots more stuff, and later on would have just written a bunch of books with information from that. But she was also hoping to disprove, like, some of these more, like, spiritual ideas kind of deal. So, and then Halix turned out to be real. So
right.
That was annoying.
Yeah, it's like gods are definitively real. In fact, you met what was it? The Earth god, I forget its name. It began with Talicia. What was it?
Dyla.
No.
But I got Dyla's amulet.
You met her too. So she's a like a demigod.
Talicia?
Yeah, there was like I think there's only
because
4.
if we have like an Earth obstacle, I could have called on her.
Right. That was the thing that I was like, there were a few chances for that to have happened and it never happened. Like you basically had the whim of a god at your hands, and like you could have done so many things, and it was just that one. I was like,
because there were times where I was like, that's not really an Earth thing.
Yeah, but you could have.
So maybe that's not relevant right now.
You were thinking too little. Like you straight up could have been like, well, can we like seal up the Underdark hole in Erngor? Yeah, hell yeah. You move some rocks. So anyway,
I thought it was like I don't know, like the path is on kind of thing. And so like she'll build a new path or whatever. I don't know.
No, that's fair. I mean, I purposely didn't give you a lot of information because it was the power of a god. I kind of was curious what you would think that would mean. All right, so you're writing a book. You're going to be you and Tinbrind or the dynamic duo. Knobolas, knowing that your mother was so this is something I had planned for you. So once you found out that your mother was the Archmage, the idea would have been, because you and I had talked about this briefly, although I don't know how serious you were, about multi-classing into sorcerer. The idea was going to be that she would have made you realize that you actually had an inherent magical ability that you simply didn't know really existed or how to access, and she would have helped you with that, thus allowing you to multi-class into sorcerer. And I actually was going to grant you an additional level, so you actually would have been one level higher than the rest of your group. So
interesting.
Yeah, so that was going to be kind of cool, and then you would have been able to have to manage not only warlock packs but also sorcery points, which would have been a lot of work. But I thought would have been kind of cool, and you could have explored a lot more magic through that.
Well, I'd always imagined, like, whenever I eventually got a chance to speak to her, I would discover something about myself. I wasn't sure what it was, but I feel like that's kind of always been my journey. So it kind of makes sense. I kind of dabbled in that, right, with that one ability that I have that lets me do a cantrip from a different different category.
Like not your class list or your spell list.
Right. Yeah. So it would have been interesting. I think the biggest shocker would realizing that my mom betrayed me. I think that would almost drive Knobolas into like a bit of a turmoil, or even like a spin where he's acts very out of character for a while because he's trying to handle the realization of that, because he spent his whole life thinking that she was the one that's out to save him, but really she's the one that left him. So
wow.
I think Knobolas would have had a bit of a breakdown at some point, which would have been interesting to play.
That would have been a crazy twist. Like,
that would have been
after all
really
of this, thinking she's sort of helping you from a distance, it turns out she's the one who's like,
from the moment that she first talked to you on the ship, I had that all planned out. I couldn't wait for you guys to get to Volantis, and that was another thing that kind of killed me. Is us heading to Erngor Kazord was not really ever the intent. That was entirely my fault, and I laid the tracks for that. And unfortunately, again, you guys picked the one that I didn't want you to pick, which led you towards Erngor. I don't even remember what the decision was, but I remember just to be like, damn it, no, we need to get to Volantis.
But there was something on the skyship. I thought we were going to Volantis, and then you said we're going somewhere else. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, well, that was, I think that's what it was. I think I was like, oh, well, you guys are heading to, that's exactly what it was. You guys would have arrived at Erngor Kazord. You would have gone in, actually, I have this really cool thing. It was called, I actually have I don't have my notes in front of me. I think it was called, like, I created a type of spider that had all these weird abilities. The idea was you guys were going to dock at a skyport at Erngor Kazord, and then you were going to go down. You were going to find like a hidden passage because the main pathway down was going to be blocked by monsters. You were going to go down and head through this, like, essentially a giant spider cave. There were a million different paths that you could have taken in there, which would have been really fun. And then you would have arrived out of what's called the Hall of the Ancients, which is basically where they bury the dead within the area, within Erngor Kazord. You guys would have found the dragon, either chose to kill it and save the city or not. Either way, had you returned back to the skyship, Magnus would have essentially been like, look, I don't know what to do with ourselves for the moment. Like, we can all travel together. At which point you guys now have a skyship. And I would have encouraged you to potentially rename it, despite that being kind of bad luck in the real world, but who cares, to whatever you wanted it to be. Had you freed Erngor Kazord, the king there was going to basically grant you the skyship as a reward. So that was now going to be your home base. So you would have had the skyship all to yourself for the rest of the campaign.
Interesting.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I totally forgot about that.
As you were saying this, I'm like, oh, that's why, like, once we were on the skyship, like, I kept trying to explore, like, ways to get Kazord to help Zuak.
Yep.
And you were like, I'm just gonna let you know, like, it's not gonna work. Like, you're not gonna save him now. And I was like,
well, actually, so it's funny that you said, because you guys rescued some of the people from Erngor Zuak, you actually would have found out later on that they had spent like maybe a couple of weeks, but it would have taken them that long to get up to Erngor Kazord. They would have infiltrated, and that group that you had saved, depending on some dice rolls, may have helped to overtake the city and rescued them anyway. Only because you guys actually, I forget how many you saved, but like you had saved enough based off what I had in my notes that there was a possibility of them helping to save the other kingdom. Yep. So you guys actually did make a good choice in that one. So, yeah.
Once in a while.
So, is there anybody that we didn't? I'm trying to think. Did we miss anybody as far as like what you would do after the campaign?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Cool. Cool. All right. Well, then there was one last thing I wanted to talk about, and then again I'll kind of shut up if there's anything you guys want to follow up with. But so as far as the future of the channel, there's two things that are going to happen with this channel. Number one is this campaign is done, which we've talked about. I mean, wouldn't make sense to, especially now after telling you guys all of the dark hidden secrets.
Now we get all the cheats. We just got all the cheat codes, and we move on. And we still fuck up and make the wrong choice.
You're right. I'd be like, well, I know that we're supposed to save the city, but So
what spaceship?
Spaceship. So what I do want to have potential for the future, and what we talked about before this stream started, is playing D&D is still really fun. And playing D&D with you guys is very fun. So I would like to keep it open for the potential of a one-shot or, occasional one shot in the future, I still have several ideas, including what I had been planning for our 2-year anniversary. One thing I didn't tell you guys, and I was keeping it a big secret, is that I actually had Molly. She was going to come back for the 2-year anniversary. I was actually drinking with her. What's today? Monday. I drank with her yesterday. Mm-hmm. We went to a big whiskey event, and we got loaded. But I was talking to her about this and the fact that we were kind of stopping the campaign, and I was like, but I still want to play this thing. So whether we play it in person with her, me, and like some people, or we all play it, I still want that to happen at some point. So hopefully we can all regather to play that. As far as the rest of the channel goes, I know I put out all kinds of other style of content. I don't know how reliable I'll be with that for the moment, and I don't know how much of a priority I can make it. Doing the AI videos does not take a whole lot of effort. As far as filming, it's mostly in the editing, and realistically it's a much more casual thing. So I like it. So I'll probably still look to do some of the AI stuff just to keep the channel alive, at least until it doesn't make sense to, or until things start taking off again. So there will be something on the channel. Anybody who's subscribed to the Patreon, I'll basically either, I already announced it, like either feel free to unsubscribe, or I don't necessarily want to cancel it because I think I might switch it up to be more about the AI stuff. But at this point, it's on you guys. And I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it.
So well, Bill, real quick, just before I jump off here, I just want to thank you for all the work you put into this. It was incredible. Some of the stuff you did obviously resonated with other D&D folks that look to you as almost a source of inspiration as far as what you were doing with the the AI and the chat GTP and all that stuff that kind of went into it. And, you could obviously tell you had a good time doing it. It sucks you don't have time for it, but I realize it was a lot of work, once you start watching those videos and see everything you put into it. So I just want to say thanks. It was a lot of fun, and I am looking forward to doing some of the one-offs too. So cheers, man.
To Bill!
Cheers, Jason.
Oh, thank you guys for being great players. I had a lot of fun torturing you, and thankfully not killing Booker, because I probably wouldn't be here today had I done that.
Yeah.
We would have found you. We would have come for you.
All right, guys. I'll see you in the fantasy world at some point soon. Cheers.
Sounds
cheers,
good.
Jason.
All right.
Yeah.
And why don't we just use that as an opportunity? We'll all sign off and say
Bill,
thank you.
Should we do one final, if anyone wants to follow us on the other channels, let's say
please.
It's quite following us on other channels. Bill, you go first. You're the leader here. Let us know where to find you.
Sure. So I run the Whiskey Dictionary. If you're into whiskey at all, chances are you've probably run across the channel. But if not, then just search for the Whiskey Dick. Just don't put the K. Otherwise, it will be a much different kind of time. And I hope you enjoy yourself.
Have you ever Googled that? Like, to see what comes up?
Well, one of my favorite puns ever is the fact that my single barrel picks are on a website called Whiskey Dick Picks. That's like the best. That's the best. I'm so happy with that. Well, thank you. Well, Clifton, since you gave me such a good segue, why don't you go next?
Sure. I kind of did for some self-promo here too. But my name is Clifton. I have a channel called Bourbon Bites. I actually got the sign installed this weekend, so I'm very excited.
Very pretty.
That's awesome.
I
do
really cool.
Whiskey reviews. I mainly do live streams. It's kind of my thing every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. I kind of do whiskey reviews with an 80s twist. We do some 80s movie nights over on my Discord server. And just really, as Bill said earlier, I appreciate the comment a lot. Like, my community is really great. So if you want to be a part of it, check it out. See if you have fun. But again, thank you, Bill, so much for this opportunity. It's been so much fun. Very on brand with my channel with the whole 80s. I never played D&D before. So thank you for giving me that opportunity to kind of know some stuff now. When people ask me like, oh, you're a nerd, you know this, I'm like, I have no idea. So thank
now
you
can say you've played
the
D&D.
knowledge building.
I will say that one of the classic tropes of D&D is that all campaigns end at level 7. So the fact that we passed that is a point of pride for me.
There you go.
Another stupid thing, at the end of the last episode, I meant to actually have you guys level up to level 11, and I totally forgot. so you can say that you hit level 11 in a D&D campaign.
There we go. It counts. It counts.
Putting that on the resume.
You should, yes. So Adriana,
I'm Adriana with Whiskey Mountains. I've taken a small break. April, we'll be back in full force, hopefully, with hiking and drinking whiskey out on the trails in the mountains here of Utah and elsewhere. And the other big thing my channel is about is Alzheimer's research and association, and doing a lot of fundraising and awareness and education around that. Every July, I do a big fundraiser, and it's like one of these cool things within the Whiskey Tube community where like this community is just super awesome.
Not just cool, one of the best things. Honestly, I think that's one of the best things that's ever come out of Whiskey Tube. So
Totally.
You guys definitely look into that. She does it every year. I've been a supporter of it every year. It's just really, really, it brings the whole community together.
You have raised a really good amount of money doing that, and it's very, very impressive.
In
the
past 3 years, we've raised over $40,000.
Yeah, that's insane.
Dang.
Very cool. Well, thank you for that, Adriana. Actually, that's if nothing else. And Ed, is there anything you want to promote? I know
not in the least.
I didn't think so.
Ed's like chilling, doing my bar thing.
I'm just here, man. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Well,
personal Instagram, maybe people can follow, or just anything, or no?
Nope. I don't exist online anymore. It's great.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, good for you.
He's just Ed with too many D's. So
too many D's.
He's got a double D. All right. Anyway, so that's how I'm going to end this. All right. Thank you, everybody. And we appreciate everybody who's taken the time to watch the campaign. If you're watching this in the future and this is your last episode, hopefully there's some one-shots to watch afterwards. If not, go check us all out in our various places. And thank you guys all for joining us here on Dungeons and Drams. Have a great rest of your night. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers all.